Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by welcoming members and officers and those members of the public watching via YouTube. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and tweet during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way downstairs via the nearest available fire exit, which is through the middle doors on my left. The muster point is in the car park to the rear of the building. Okay. Item 1, Dawn, do we have any apologies?
We have no excuse me, we have no apologies, Chair, but we're still expecting councillors Bowden, Sharp and Prentice.
Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Sure.
John Walker, I'm a pensioner, pension fund receiver, and my daughter and son and daughter-in-law are usual declaration.
That's absolutely fine, John. Thank you.
Chair, just for completeness, to remind the committee, I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees and Directors of the Cambridge Sports Hall Trust, which is one of the non-local government employers in the scheme.
Thank you for that, Lee.
Right, Chair. Matthew Pink, I'm an active member and my wife's also an active member.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 2 then. We're being asked to approve the public minutes of the Pension Fund Committee meeting on the 25th of October as an accurate record. Can I ask if any member who does not agree with this proposal to raise their hands now? Thank you. I see no objections, so we will take those minutes as approved and I will sign them in a moment. We would usually consider the action log at this point, but there are no outstanding actions and therefore no action log today. Welcome, Alan. We'll give you a moment to settle down.
I've had a text from Chris Bowden this morning as well to say he's not able to attend.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we've just reached item 3. We've received no petitions or public questions today. So we will therefore move on to item 4, which is the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund Administration Report. Can I ask Michelle Oakensen, Governance and Regulation Manager, to present this report and find me some words, please.
Thank you. So just a few things to pull out of the report for today. So just really to mention on the key performance indicators, as you'll see there under section 3, all the KPIs have been consistently good for the period, with the exception of 2, which were amber. The explanation for these are in 3.4 and 3.5. Effectively, there was resourcing issues within the teams that deal with the payment of retirement benefits for active membership. And this was due to some vacancies and a period of sickness within the team. And in addition, during October, there was a system issue that resulted in a backlog of check-in. All of those issues have now been resolved. For the employer contributions in section 4.3, obviously there's very high contributions received from the employers for July, August and September, and in particular August was very pleasing to see 100% received on time for that period. So the total for the yearly average now is 99.5%. So just to draw your attention to a breach of the law that is in section 5.2. So this is deemed as a non-material breach, but just to draw your attention to the 11 annual allowance pension saving statements that were not issued by the statutory deadline. But just to confirm that these have been entered onto our breaches log in regards to our internal policy. And section 6, just to flag there that there is one ongoing, one IDRP in relation to an ABC payment. The adjudication was sent within the statutory timescale, sent on the 17th, and the complaint in this case was held at stage 1. And just to mention that on the appendix 3, the exempt appendix, not mentioning any names, but all the employers on there that had unpaid next to the contributions, just to confirm that all those contributions have now been received. But I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Members, any questions? I see no one wants to ask you questions today. I assume that the issues that you highlighted have all been addressed now, and we're not going to be concerned about any breaches going forward.
Yes, for this particular period, the issues with those statements have all been sent. So we're where we should be for now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, in which case the committee is asked to note the administration performance report, and I trust that we're happy to do so. Thank you. All right. In which case we'll move on to item 5, which is the governance and compliance report, and I will hand over to Michelle once again.
Thank you. So this report is getting us up to speed in where we are with the LGPS developments going on currently. There's quite a bit of update in terms of the dashboard regulations. So just to run through where we are with those at the moment. So the first section is the draft regulations that were laid for approval. So we can confirm now that the regulations were laid for approval in October. The regulations were debated and approved on the 15th of November. The DWP have now put the regulations forward, and they actually came into force yesterday, the 12th of December. So that's all gone through. Further response to the consultation. So as a result of the further consultation that went through and concluded in July, the main section that affects us there is about the pension schemes having 6 months notice at the point of the pension dashboards available point. This is pleasing, as this is an increase to the 90 days that was proposed in the original consultation. With the research on the public value of dashboards, so the pension dashboard programme has published some results of the research that was carried out into the value that people attach to their dashboards and the likelihood that people are likely to use them. So the initial findings of this survey were that 57% of individuals would be likely to use the dashboards. And what the initial thinking is that as the dashboards become live, that figure they're expecting to see increase as the awareness increases in that area. In terms of the dashboard ecosystem, there's some work going on there behind the scenes in terms of the early testing. And so there's some real pension data being tested with the state pension and the money helper dashboards. Some other services have volunteered to also be involved in stage 2 to do some additional testing in regards to the connection journey in the new year, and for the experiences in terms of this testing journey. These will then develop, these will then feed into the connection process and help improve the experiences, hopefully for everybody else in the pensions industry. So we'll wait to see what happens with those testing stages. In terms of the TCFD consultation, Just a note there to say that the fund, we have submitted a response on behalf of the fund, which was broadly in agreement with the proposals. So the next stage now is to wait for DLUHC to provide the outcome in due course, and obviously wait to see what the outcome is, to if there's any next steps that need to be taken in regards to that one. So an update now in terms of the work of the pension regulator. So the pension regulator has been busy introducing some new policies. So there's 3 new policies that have been launched recently. These are the revised enforcement policy, updated prosecution policy, and new enforcement strategy. So these 3 really are a framework which are an overarching approach to how the regulator will be approaching enforcement cases, investigations, prosecuting in the workplaces, and the links to those are in section 3.3.1.5 if anybody wants to see the full details of those policies. The next strategy that the pension regulator has put into force is the scam prevention strategy. So this is one where the pension regulator has put in a strategy to help further combat pension scams. And as you'll see there, the key drivers behind this are to make sure that they are educating savers about the threat of scams present, encouraging higher standards and preventing practices that may lead to harm, and fighting fraud through prevention, disruption and punishment. What I would say about this particular section, we'll cover it off a bit more in the risk monitoring report also, because obviously because of the current threat with scams at the minute with the cost of living crisis, it's been heightened in the risk report, so we can discuss that item further also. And the only other thing to mention is in the training appendix. From December onwards, there's a couple of new training sessions that have been added on the 16th and 19th of December. And if anybody would like to go on any of the other training, please let me know, and we'll obviously continue to keep that updated. But happy to take any questions.
Members, questions, comments? Alan.
Sorry, more a comment, because I'm pleased with anything that sort of takes forward the trying to prevent, pension scams, because obviously it must be devastating to the individuals if it gets happened. So I do welcome that. I'm just thinking whether we do anything or need to do anything in terms of, with the current situation with people tight for cash, and they look at their pension pot and think, okay, well, they get a dodgy deal, so to speak, from dodgy offer to cash in some of that pension. How we can, I know individuals each have their own responsibility for their own livelihoods, but it's just how we can sort of get the message out as much as we can to help them, really. So it's more of a comment than a question, but I'll welcome anything that will stop this dreadful sort of scams that are happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And I think as part of the scam prevention strategy, the next stage will be to fully go through that and make sure that, we're absolutely compliant with everything that's come out of that. What I would say from a reassurance point of view is a lot of the work on these potential scams, and it's usually in the transfer out space where people, like you say, are approached, with these offers of, releasing money early, which is very tempting, obviously, in the current crisis that we're in, that we already have quite a few processes in place to prevent that happening. So we have kind of red flag triggers. We send out the Scam Smart leaflet with all the transfer information and things like ensuring that members have had appropriate financial advice and things like that. But we would definitely be taking it further to make sure that to see if there's anything further we can do.
Any other questions, anybody? Okay. Thank you. In which case, the committee is asked to note the governance and compliance report, and I take it we're happy to do that. Thank you. Move on to item 6, which is the business plan update report. Can I ask Mark Whitby, Head of Pensions, to introduce this report?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll concentrate on the RAG status table in the executive summary, and really on the ones which are amber. Obviously, we're making good progress across a number of projects, including some that are going to be updated later today, like the valuation, and also lots of procurements that are just really, we're doing some work in advance of next year now on those. But turning to the ambers, the bottom one, just to remind you from last time, is the website, well, the complete overhaul of both the employer and the member website, which is progressing well, but did start slightly delayed, so that hence the amber. But that is broadly on track, and Corey is providing an update to me on the good progress being made on that just yesterday. So the other two are really amber because they're impacted by some of the resourcing issues we've had within the service. So obviously Michelle touched on those. We have recruited both vacancies, and also, if you recall from last time, I said we were putting in a couple of extra people across the service to help deal with the volume of business as usual undecided leavers. So these are early leavers prior to retirement age, and that's starting to have an effect. We have held some people back from what was the retirements team, which Michelle had mentioned had resourcing issues, to be trained elsewhere. And one of the impacts of that is that the person who was going to be doing the guaranteed minimum pension rectification, I've actually got in another team at the moment, and I'll move them back into the team to do that project in the new year. So that project is deliberately being delayed because I wanted to make sure that we don't put at risk our ability to pay pensions. Just to reassure you, I've had a discussion with all the funds within our partner funds within Access, and we are basically aligned with all of them in terms of our progress. So there's nothing untoward there. So that's a deliberate delay, kind of led by myself. So we'll reprofile that in the new business plan next year. The undecided leavers, I explained I think at the last committee, we've been generating required volumes within our project team, but the business as usual cases were still building up to offset that. There are now, so I think I was probably more pessimistic when we drafted this than I am right now, because over the last month or two, we have seen a net 600 case reduction from what was the peak. So the extra resource in the bulk processing is beginning to have an effect. What I want to do really is to see where we are at the end of the financial year, and what I want to see then is a reduction from where we were at the beginning of the year. And as long as we are, I think I would then have confidence that we can start to make inroads into this. If not, we'll have to review what we need to do about it. So that's really where we are with those two amber cases. Or amber projects. I'm happy to open up for any questions on anything else, or indeed those.
Members? I see nothing. I see nothing around the room. Okay, in which case we are asked to note the business plan update. Are we happy to do so? Thank you. In which case we now move on to item 7, which is report on the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund Conflicts of Interest Policy. Can I ask Michelle to introduce this report?
Thank you. So this policy really came about as part of the driver of the Good Governance Review recommendations. So the recommendation was that each fund should have a fund published conflicts of interest policy. And this is in addition to the administering authority conflicts of interest that we already disclose and that we're used to doing already. So although the recommendation is still being considered, it was felt actually it would be good practice to get this in place ahead of that recommendation review. So in light of that, we have developed this policy and really to make sure that the fund and members are looking at their fiduciary duties when making decisions for the pension committee and making sure that we are making appropriate declarations that are wider and out the scope of the admin authority ones. So to support this, we organised a training session that was conducted by Aon at the end of November. So members from the committee and board attended that session because all members will be covered by this policy. The session itself, I thought, was really positive and engaging. It also brought out some potential examples, and there was quite good discussions about examples such as climate change and potential employer conflicts, for example, in terms of contribution rate setting, and just remembering what member responsibilities are when making these decisions. So in terms of the policy itself, in the appendix is the full policy, but at the back of that is the proposed declaration and register that we're proposing to use. And if the policy is approved, just really to highlight that it will be the responsibility of every individual covered by the policy to identify if there's any instances that may be an issue that need to be reported to us. The intention is that we'll send out the declarations once a year as a matter of course, but obviously if anything changes in the meantime, to flag that to me. So really, if anybody's got any questions in terms of the policy itself, but today we're asking for approval of the policy, please.
Thank you, Michelle. Hopefully you've all seen the training that's been available on this, and do you have any questions on the policy? Any issues you wish to raise? No. Sorry, missed you there, Alan.
No, just, I mean, I'll comment and brief. I thought the training, that session was very good actually, and it was very thought provoking. I took a number of things away from that, which, yeah, certainly, I think it was worthwhile. And if you weren't on it, then try and have a look at the recording of it, because I think it brought up some good issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd like to emphasise that if you haven't seen it yet, please do complete the training. It'll give you a much better understanding of what you're going to need to actually put on these declarations. And I think, sometimes we can, even those of us who complete these declarations for council purposes, will find useful information in there. Okay, no other questions or comments, in which case we are asked to approve the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund conflicts of interest policy. Members, are you happy to approve the policy? Yep, I see no one objecting, so that is approved. Thank you. Which takes us on to item 8. Which is the Pension Fund Annual Report and Statement of Accounts 2021-22. Can I ask Ben Barlow, Investments and Fund Accounting Manager, to introduce the report?
Thank you, Alison, and apologies. I know you've seen this report because of your audit committee duties, and it's been through the draft as well as, and now we're pleased to bring the final audited annual report and statement of accounts to you. So there's no material changes from the draft accounts that you have seen, and again, some of you will have seen in audit committee as well. If I will draw your attention to page 74, section 4, where there's a list of what has been included since the draft accounts. So there's inclusion of some extra reports, but the main ones that I'll pull out are the chairman's foreword and the TCFD report that Michelle's already mentioned. It was an important step forward for us this year. As I said, there's no material differences. There's one uncorrected uncorrected difference, immaterial difference, which is around level 3 in investments. But that wasn't seen as a concern by Mark, the auditor, who's here with us today. Will take over from me in a short while. I think the main message here around the accounts is that they've been audited, they've been found to be of a true and fair view, in line with SIFR regulations and clear of material misstatement. So, I mean, the ICE 260 is very much the auditor's report, so I will pass over to Mark on that. But just say if you do want to have any questions around the accounts themselves, I have brought Fiona along, who can answer some of the more technical questions if you want to get down into the drill down into the numbers. But otherwise, I'll pass you over to Mark from EY.
Members, have you got any questions for Ben at this stage? Nothing, in which case I will pass over.
Thank you, Alison. Good morning, committee members. So I'm Mark Hodgson, audit partner at Ernst & Young. So just to reflect on the audit as a whole, I think it's been a very good audit, executed to the timetable, and clearly we are in a position to be able to issue our audit opinion at the appropriate point, which I'll touch on later. So some key messages from our report for you is we're working to a materiality level of £43 million and reporting any audit differences above 2.2 million to you and the Audit and Accounts Committee. So in terms of our audit risks, which are on page 183 of your pack today, there were no changes to the audit risks that we had in our audit plan. And as you can see, we've gained all the assurances we need against those risks, and therefore take us to the position to issue our audit opinion. In terms of uncorrected audit differences on page 184 and 185 of the pack, as Ben said, the valuation of level 3 assets was a risk in our audit plan because they are hard to value and non-market based investments. The draft financial statements were based on valuations at the 31st of December with roll forwards to the 31st of March. Clearly, during the audit process, we were able to get the actual 31st of March valuations, and that did show that the balance in the draft statements was understated by 10.274 million, of which 400,000 related to Cambridge and Counties Bank. Officers have chosen not to adjust for that audit difference in the revised financial statements on the grounds of materiality. Clearly 10.2 million is significantly below our true and fair audit opinion materiality level of 43 million, but clearly it is for both officers and the Audit and Accounts Committee to concur with management. And then in terms of closing procedures, we can only issue our audit opinion on the pension fund statements at the same time as we issue our audit opinion on the Cambridge County Council accounts, because the pension fund statements form part of the overall Cambridge County Council accounts. We're looking to do that in February 2023. So our outstanding procedures as of today are the receipt of a letter of representation, which we need on the day of our audit opinion, and subsequent events considerations up to that date of audit opinion as well. For your assurance as a committee, we have only requested standard management representations because we've got all the evidence that we need through the audit procedures that we have deployed as part of the audit plan. So taking all of that together, that would lead us to be able to issue an unqualified opinion, the wording of which is set out in section 3 of our report today. So we'd like to thank Ben, Fiona and the rest of their team for all the support during the audit, and clearly a robust set of draft financial statements that have stood the rigor of our audit. Happy to take any questions, Alison.
Thank you, Mark. Members, any questions? Appreciate we've seen these a number of times. I would like to echo those comments, because obviously having a robust set of accounts does make life an awful lot easier. And I know it does help the auditors tremendously. So thank you, officers, for what you've done to achieve that. Okay, in which case we are asked to approve the final annual report. Note the statement of accounts of the pension fund for the 2021-22 financial year, and note the findings of the external audit documented in the ISA 260. Are we happy to take them all together, and are we happy to approve all of those? Yes, thank you. We'll take that by affirmation. Thank you. All right, so we move on to item 9, which is the employer admissions and cessations report. Can I ask Corey Blow's words aren't working today, I'm afraid. Employer Services Manager to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. A fairly standard report. This is the report to indicate which employers have come into the fund and have exited the fund. As you can see, there is one admitted body for noting. The committee doesn't have a discretion to allow or disallow the employer to enter the scheme. They've signed up to the admission agreement, so you must admit them. There are 11 employers that have ceased participation. The only one that I want to draw your attention to and give a verbal update is the last employer named in Appendix A of the report. You'll see that this is quite an aged case. The work was done at the time to collect the data and send this across to the actuary, but for some reason, the invoice wasn't issued to the employer. This was being dealt with by a member of staff that's no longer with the service, so I've not been able to track back where this fell down, unfortunately. So this is being reported to you just to update that and say that the invoice has been issued to the employer and we're in discussions about getting that deficit paid. Happy to take any questions on those.
Okay, members, do you have any questions for Corey? No, I see nothing at all. So we are asked to do 1,000,001 things once again. Committee is asked to agree the recommendations set out on page 221 of the agenda pack. That is to note the admissions of the following admitted body to the Cambridge Pension Fund and approve the sealing of the admissions agreement: Aspens Services Limited, Park Street, C of E Primary School. Note the cessation of the following bodies from the pensions, the Cambridge Pension Fund: Caldercup Parish Council, Cambridge Primary Education Trust, Hertfordshire Catering Limited, Meldreth Primary School, Compass Contract Services, the Netherall School, Caterlink UK Limited, Anglia Learning Trust, TNS Catering Limited, WASP Cluster 2, Hertfordshire Catering Limited, the CAM Academy Trust, Easy Clean Contractors, Milton Primary School, Aspen Services Limited, Fulbourn Primary School, Alliance in Partnership Limited, Cambridge Community Service, NHS Trust. Are we happy to do that? Okay, I see no objection, so we will take that information. Thank you. Item 10 is the committee agenda plan. Officers, do you have any comments or updates?
Just one comment to make, please. So on the Code of Practice Action Plan and a Good Governance Review, you'll see there that that's been rescheduled to March at the moment. And you'll know from previous meetings, we're tracking national guidance on both of those to see when we can bring something to you. We are under the impression that the Good Governance Review, we should be hearing something early 2023. So hopefully that will be the case. But obviously, if any of that changes, I will update you at the next meeting and reschedule appropriately.
Members, any questions? No, in which case we are asked to note the committee agenda plan, and I assume we're happy to do so. Thank you. Okay, item 11. In order to discuss the following items, we need to move the meeting into private session, excluding the press and public. Members, do you agree with the proposal? Okay. So we are asked to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following two items contain exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended, and that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Thank you. As this is the final item on the agenda, I would like to express my thanks to those members of the public and press who have taken the time to watch the meeting today via the council's website. Broadcast will now end. The committee is due to meet next